I'm Mike, a 45-year-old long-haul trucker who spent over 2 decades navigating lonely highways and endless stretches of asphalt. I live alone in a modest apartment on the outskirts of Roanoke, where the nights are quiet but never truly silent. I've always found solace behind the wheel. My rig was my sanctuary, a fortress against the chaos of everyday life. But one night, during what should have been just another routine haul, my world was upended by an encounter so chilling, it still haunts me. I never imagined that a solitary drive through the back roads could expose me to a darkness far beyond the reach of human explanation. It was a bitterly cold night in late autumn, the kind of night when the wind slices through your clothes and even your breath seems to freeze mid-air. I was hauling a load of sensitive electronics from a small town in Virginia, and as usual, my cab was dimly lit by the soft glow of my dashboard. Outside, the road disappeared into a void of black, bordered by dense whispering woods. The air carried a mix of diesel fumes and the earthy scent of damp, decaying leaves, a fragrance that somehow made the night feel both industrial and ancient. At first, everything was normal. The rhythmic purr of the engine, the occasional tapping of rain on the windshield, and the low hum of my CB radio provided a comforting backdrop. But as the miles slipped by, I began noticing details that sent shivers down my spine. It started with a faint, irregular tapping on the side of my cab, a pattern that didn't match the natural sounds of the road or the pitter-patter of rain. I caught fleeting glimpses of movement in my mirrors. At one moment, I thought I saw a shadow dart between the trees, too deliberate to be just the play of light. The isolation of that stretch of highway was oppressive. Every sound, the crunch of gravel under my tires, the rustling of dry leaves, stirred by the wind, seemed amplified in the stillness. My mind, already weary from countless solitary nights, began conjuring unsettling possibilities. Was someone following me? Or worse, was something not of this world lurking in the darkness? I tried to shake off the growing dread, convincing myself it was merely fatigue playing tricks on my eyes and ears. After driving for another 20 miles, the tapping on the side of the cab grew louder, more insistent, like a secret message being relayed by an unseen force. My hands tightened around the wheel as my heart started to race. I switched the radio to a different channel, hoping to drown out the eerie sounds with a familiar voice. But all I got was static and occasional garbled words that made no sense. It was as if the very air around me was charged with an unsettling energy. Needing to escape the mounting tension, I decided to pull over at a deserted truck stop that I'd passed before. The place looked like it had been abandoned for years. A scattering of rusted service stations, flickering streetlights that barely pierced the darkness, and a lone security lamp casting a weak halo over cracked asphalt. I parked my rig on a gravel lot that felt more like a forgotten cemetery than a resting spot for weary travelers. Stepping out of my truck, the biting cold hit me like a slap. The crunch of gravel beneath my boots echoed unnaturally, each step resonating as though I were intruding into a sacred, forbidden place. I wandered towards an old, dilapidated service building, its walls marked with strange, almost ritualistic symbols that looked like they'd been etched by desperate hands long ago. In the distance, a faint murmur, almost like whispers, drifted from the dark corners of the lot, sending a chill straight to my core. The further I walked, the more my senses were assaulted by the night's sinister details. A broken neon sign buzzed intermittently above a shuttered diner, its light flickering in time with my quickening heartbeat. I could taste the metallic tang of fear on my tongue as a low, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the cold air. Every sense was on high alert, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness itself was alive, watching, waiting. It wasn't long before I noticed a figure standing at the edge of the light cast by a lone lamp. At first I thought it was just a trick of my tired eyes, a fellow trucker perhaps stranded like me. But as I drew closer, I realized there was something off. The figure was tall, gaunt, and shrouded in a long, ragged coat that fluttered in the wind. Its eyes, if you could call them that, glimmered with an otherworldly light, as if reflecting the very essence of the night. I felt a primal urge to flee, yet my feet were frozen, rooted to the spot by an overwhelming sense of dread. I retreated back to my truck, heart pounding so loudly I feared it might shatter the silence. But the unsettling presence seemed to follow me. I could feel its gaze even as I fumbled with the keys. Every shadow around me twisted into shapes of menace, and the eerie tapping from earlier was replaced by a silence so thick it nearly suffocated me. I pressed my back against the cold metal of the cab, trying to muster the courage to start the engine and drive away. But my mind was a whirlwind of intrusive, disjointed thoughts. Had I disturbed something that was meant to remain hidden? Even as I sat there, shivering in the dark, an inexplicable chill crept over me. I thought I heard a soft, sorrowful whisper carried by the wind, words I couldn't quite make out, but which resonated deep within me. The moment was heavy with foreboding, as though the night itself was trying to communicate a warning. Mew, thoughts turned to past encounters on lonely roads, half-forgotten memories of eerie happenings that I'd once dismissed as tricks of the mind. But now, standing at the crossroads of reason and terror, I couldn't ignore the possibility that I was experiencing something far beyond ordinary fear. In the suffocating stillness of that desolate truck stop, the presence became undeniable. I heard the unmistakable sound of slow, deliberate footsteps approaching my truck, each step measured and echoing in the vast emptiness. My pulse surged as I scrambled to start the engine, the cold metal of the keys slipping through my trembling fingers. Through the small, grimy window, I caught sight of the figure moving with an unnerving grace toward me. It wasn't a man, exactly. It was something else entirely, a spectral entity that defied all logic. The figure's silhouette was distorted by the wavering light, its form both human and yet disturbingly inhuman. Its eyes, deep and hollow, locked onto mine as if peering into the very depths of my soul. I could see no clear features beneath the shadow of its tattered coat, only a looming sense of malevolence that made my heart nearly stop. The air in the cab turned frigid, and I felt as though icy fingers were brushing against my skin, sending shockwaves of terror through my entire body. Time seemed to slow as I gripped the steering wheel, every nerve in my body screaming at me to flee. The headlights flickered to life as I slammed my foot on the accelerator, momentarily illuminating the ominous figure in stark, harsh light. For a split second, I saw the ghastly detail, a face contorted by a mix of anguish and malice, eyes that shone with a light that was not of this world. It was a look that promised nothing but despair and doom. As I drove away, the relentless pursuit of that presence seemed to persist. The figure remained at the periphery of my vision, an ever-present reminder that the darkness was not willing to let go. Every bump in the road, every fleeting shadow cast by the passing trees, became potential harbingers of its return. A strange, sorrowful voice echoed in my mind, an echo that mingled with the roar of the engine, whispering, "You can never outrun what haunts you." The sound was both a lament and a curse, gnawing at my sanity with each passing second. My escape turned into a desperate flight as I careened down the highway, the cold night blurring past me. Yet, no matter how fast I drove, I felt that spectral presence closing in, as if it were tethered to me by an invisible chain. The boundary between the tangible world and the realm of nightmares had dissolved, leaving me stranded in a liminal space where every moment was a battle between survival and the inevitable pull of the unknown. My vision swam with distorted images of the figure, its face, its eyes, and that perpetual haunting gaze that promised retribution. The very thought of what it might do if it ever caught up with me was enough to freeze my blood. As I pushed my rig to its limits, the weight of the night and the relentless pursuit conspired to blur the line between reality and hallucination. Every nerve was alight with terror, and for long moments I couldn't tell if I was still in control of my vehicle or if fate itself was steering me toward an unspeakable end. The darkness outside, filled with the sound of my rapid heartbeat and the distant mocking echoes of that ghostly whisper, bore witness to a truth I could neither deny nor escape. Some terrors are destined to follow you, no matter how far you run. I finally managed to pull into a brightly lit service station, the harsh neon lights a jarring contrast to the inky blackness I'd just escaped. Yet even there, as I sat shivering in the relative safety of a well-lit lot, the image of that spectral figure refused to fade. Every time I glance in the rearview mirror or catch a stray shadow dancing in the periphery, I feel that bone-deep chill and hear that echoing whisper. I've tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light, a fragment of an overactive, tired mind, but deep down, I know the truth. That night, the road revealed a secret that no rational explanation can dispel. The encounter left me forever changed, a reminder that even in the vast solitude of the open highway, the darkness is never truly empty. It is alive, watching, waiting for the moment when its cold embrace becomes unavoidable. That night, as I fled from a presence that defied understanding, I learned that some shadows are meant to follow you, forever binding you to the mysteries of the unknown. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If you felt that shiver run down your spine and sense the relentless pull of the darkness, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support not only helps me continue sharing these eerie tales, but also brings us closer together in our journey through the realm of true horror. Until next time, stay vigilant on the road, and remember, sometimes the night holds secrets that you'd rather not uncover. See you in the next video. When I was 28, I worked as a long-haul trucker based out of Ohio. It wasn't glamorous work, just me, my rig, and endless miles of highway, but it paid the bills. My wife, Sarah, hated when I left for weeks at a time, but she understood. We had a little girl named Lily who was turning 3 that summer. I promised myself I'd be home in time for her birthday. I never thought a routine delivery through West Virginia would lead me to question everything I thought I knew about reality. It started like any other night. The clock read 2:17 a.m., and I was cruising along Route 47, a desolate stretch of road flanked by dense woods on either side. The air smelled earthy, like damp leaves and pine needles, and the only sounds were the hum of my engine and the occasional chirp of crickets. At first glance, it seemed peaceful, a quiet escape from the chaos of the cities I'd driven through earlier that week. But something about this place felt off. I spotted an abandoned rest stop up ahead, its neon sign flickering faintly despite being clearly unused for years. As I passed it, I caught a glimpse of movement in my rearview mirror, a figure standing near the edge of the tree line, watching me. For a moment I considered stopping, but then I shook my head. "You're tired," I told myself. Probably just some hitchhiker or local. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Route 47 wasn't exactly known for its scenic views. It was more infamous for its isolation. There weren't many towns nearby, and cell reception was spotty at best. Most drivers avoided it after dark, opting instead for busier highways where help was closer if needed. But I didn't have much choice. My GPS insisted this was the fastest route to my destination. About 20 minutes later, I noticed the same figure again. This time, it was standing right in the middle of the road, illuminated by my headlights. Its silhouette was human-shaped, but there was something unnatural about the way it moved, jerky, almost insect-like. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt mere feet away. When I stepped out of the cab, flashlight in hand, the figure was gone. "What the hell?" I muttered, scanning the area. The beam of my flashlight revealed nothing but gravel and overgrown grass. Still, I couldn't ignore the prickling sensation crawling up my spine. Back in the cab, I tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Maybe it was a deer, or maybe I was just exhausted. Whatever it was, I decided to keep moving. But the strange occurrences didn't stop there. A few miles down the road, I heard a faint tapping sound coming from the passenger side door of the cab. At first, I thought it was debris hitting the truck, but when I glanced over, I saw fingers pressed against the glass. They belonged to a gaunt man with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. His lips moved, though no sound came through the window. Panic surged through me. I hit the gas, speeding away as fast as the truck would allow. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing in the middle of the road, unmoving, his grin widening impossibly wide. The next hour passed in a blur of paranoia and adrenaline. Every shadow seemed alive, every noise amplified tenfold. When I finally reached another rest stop, an actual functioning one, I pulled over, desperate for a break. Inside the small diner, I ordered coffee and tried to calm myself down. The waitress, a middle-aged woman named Barb, gave me a sympathetic look. "You okay, hun? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh. "Just tired, I guess." Barb leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "Be careful out there, all right? Folks around here say Route 47's cursed. People go missing all the time." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I brushed them off. Superstitions, I thought. Nothing more. As I sipped my coffee, I noticed a group of locals huddled in the corner booth. Their conversation was hushed, but I caught snippets, whispers, about disappearances, strange lights in the woods, and sightings of a man without a face. One older man caught my gaze and quickly looked away, shaking his head as if warning me not to ask questions. Before leaving, I asked Barb about the stories. She hesitated, glancing nervously toward the group. "There's talk," she said quietly, "about something living in those woods. Something old. Some say it feeds on fear. Others say it's looking for company. Either way, folks don't come back once they wander too far into the trees." Her words stayed with me as I climbed back into the truck. The diner's warm glow faded behind me, replaced by the oppressive darkness of Route 47. The tapping returned, this time louder, more insistent. Then came the whispers. Faint at first, they grew clearer with each passing mile. "You're not supposed to be here," they hissed. "Leave, or stay forever." My hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles white. I glanced in the mirrors repeatedly, half expecting to see the gaunt man again. Instead, I saw shadows darting between the trees, keeping pace with the truck. Suddenly, the engine sputtered and died. "No, no, no!" I shouted, slamming my fists against the steering wheel. The dashboard lights flickered before going completely dark. Outside, the world fell silent. Even the wind stopped blowing. Then, without warning, the passenger side door creaked open. I turned slowly, heart pounding. Sitting there was the gaunt man, his face inches from mine. His breath was cold, carrying the scent of decay. "Stay," he whispered, his voice echoing unnaturally. Before I could react, his hand shot out, gripping my wrist with an iron-like strength. The world around us warped and twisted, colors bleeding together until everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying in the middle of the road. My truck was nowhere to sight. Panic set in as I scrambled to my feet, scanning the horizon. The forest loomed menacingly on both sides, its towering trees casting long, jagged shadows across the asphalt. A thick fog rolled in, muffling sound and distorting distance. I called out, hoping someone might hear me. My voice echoed hollowly, swallowed by the oppressive silence. That's when I saw them, the figures, dozens of them emerging from the mist. They were humanoid but grotesquely elongated, their limbs impossibly thin and jointed like insects. Their faces were featureless except for gaping mouths filled with rows of jagged teeth. They moved silently, encircling me with predatory precision. One stepped forward, taller than the rest. Its body shimmered slightly, as if it existed halfway between dimensions. It tilted its head, studying me with an intelligence that chilled me to the bone. "You belong here now," it said, its voice a chorus of whispers. "No," I screamed, backing away. "This isn't real! None of this is real!" The creature lunged, its movements faster than anything I'd ever seen. I dove to the side, narrowly avoiding its grasp. Scrambling to my feet, I ran blindly into the woods, branches clawing at my skin and roots tripping me at every step. Behind me, I heard the creatures following, their laughter echoing through the trees. Each step felt heavier, as though the very ground resisted my escape. My lungs burned and my vision blurred, but I pushed on, driven by sheer terror. Finally, I stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, covered in moss and etched with symbols I couldn't understand. Around it lay remnants of past victims, rotting clothes, rusted tools, and scraps of paper bearing desperate pleas for help. The tallest creature appeared before me, blocking my path. Its mouth stretched wider, revealing a void within. From the darkness emerged memories, not my own, but fragments of lives cut short. Faces screamed silently, reaching out for salvation that never came. "Join us," it whispered. Summoning every ounce of courage, I grabbed a sharp rock from the ground and hurled it at the creature. To my astonishment, it recoiled, letting out a guttural shriek. Realizing I had a chance, I charged past it, sprinting toward the edge of the clearing. Behind me, the creatures howled in rage, their voices merging into a deafening roar. I burst back onto the road, gasping for air. My truck sat idling a few yards away, as if waiting for me. Without hesitation, I jumped inside, slammed the door shut, and floored the accelerator. In the rearview mirror, I saw the creatures spill onto the road, their forms dissolving into shadow as they chased after me, but they couldn't keep up. Slowly, the fog thinned, and the oppressive weight lifted. The next morning, my truck was found abandoned on the side of Route 47. The cargo container was still locked, intact, but I was nowhere to be found. Authorities searched the area thoroughly, but uncovered no clues, no footprints, no signs of struggle, nothing. Some speculated I'd wandered off into the woods, while others believed I'd fallen victim to foul play. But those who know Route 47 well whisper a different story. They say that late at night, when the fog rolls in thick and heavy, you can hear faint whispers carried by the wind. And if you listen closely enough, you might catch a single phrase repeated over and over again. You belong to the road now. To this day, truckers report seeing a phantom rig driving itself along Route 47, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Some claim they've even glimpsed a familiar face behind the wheel, a gaunt man with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. As for me, well, let's just say I won't be making deliveries anytime soon. Route 93 was infamous among truckers. Stretching through the desolate plains of northern New Mexico, it was a road that seemed to swallow people whole. Locals whispered about its cursed history, rumors of disappearances, ghostly apparitions, and strange phenomena that defied explanation. For veteran truck driver Ethan Cole, Route 93 had always been just another stretch of asphalt, one he avoided whenever possible. But tonight, with an urgent delivery deadline looming and no other viable route available, Ethan found himself barreling down this forsaken highway under the cover of darkness. It wasn't superstition that made him uneasy. It was the stories. Tales told over coffee at roadside diners, late-night CB radio chatter, and even warnings from his dispatcher back in Albuquerque. They all pointed to the same conclusion. Something unnatural haunted Route 93. Still, Ethan prided himself on being a rational man. He didn't believe in ghosts or curses. What he did believe in was survival. And right now, survival meant making it to his destination before sunrise. As his rig rumbled along the cracked pavement, the only sounds were the steady hum of the engine and the occasional chirp of crickets. The moon hung low, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Ethan adjusted his cap, trying to shake off the creeping sense of unease. This was going to be a long night. Then, without warning, she appeared, a lone figure standing at the edge of the road, waving frantically for him to stop. At first glance, the woman looked harmless. She wore a tattered gray coat, jeans, and boots caked with mud, as though she'd been walking for miles. Her face was pale, almost translucent under the dim glow of his headlights, but her eyes were sharp and pleading, against his better judgment, and, despite every instinct screaming not to pick up strangers this far from civilization, Ethan slowed his rig to a halt. "Need a ride?" he called out, leaning slightly out the window. She nodded, clutching a small backpack tightly against her chest. Without saying a word, she climbed into the passenger seat, her movements slow and deliberate. Up close, Ethan noticed how gaunt she looked, her skin stretched too tightly over her cheekbones, her lips cracked and dry. Something about her presence felt off. "My name's Ethan," he said awkwardly, trying to break the silence as he merged back onto the road. "Where you headed?" She hesitated before answering, her voice barely above a whisper. "Salt Lake City." "That's where I'm going too," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. "Small world, huh?" But she didn't respond. Instead, she stared straight ahead, her gaze fixed on some invisible point beyond the windshield. Every now and then, Ethan caught glimpses of her reflection in the rearview mirror, her expression blank yet unsettlingly intense. The first sign that something was wrong came around midnight. Ethan had been driving for hours without seeing another soul when he noticed headlights flickering faintly in his rearview mirror. At first, he dismissed it as another trucker taking advantage of the empty road, but as the vehicle drew closer, he realized it wasn't a semi-truck. It was a beat-up sedan, moving erratically and gaining speed far too quickly for comfort. "Who's out here at this hour?" Ethan muttered to himself, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The car sped past him, its tires screeching as it swerved dangerously close to the shoulder. Through the glare of his headlights, Ethan caught a glimpse of the driver, a gaunt figure with hollow eyes and a twisted grin plastered across their face. Before he could process what he'd seen, the car disappeared into the distance, leaving behind nothing but swirling dust. Shaking his head, Ethan tried to focus on the road ahead. "Probably some drifter," he reasoned aloud. "Just keep your eyes peeled." But the encounter left him rattled. His CB radio crackled moments later, breaking the silence. Static filled the cabin until a distorted voice cut through the noise. "You shouldn't have come here." Ethan froze, his heart pounding. The voice was low, guttural, and utterly devoid of emotion. It sent chills racing down his spine. "Who is this?" he demanded, leaning toward the radio. "What do you want?" There was no response, only more. Static. He switched off the CB, hoping to drown out the eerie message with music. Yet the words echoed in his mind like a mantra. You shouldn't have come here. Minutes turned into miles, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Every time he glanced in his mirrors, the reflection of the road seemed darker, denser, as though the very air was conspiring against him. Then, just as he rounded a bend, he saw it, the sedan, parked sideways in the middle of the road. Adrenaline surged through him as he slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop mere feet from the abandoned vehicle. There was no sign of the driver, no footprints leading away, just the car, sitting there like a specter waiting to pounce. This is insane, Ethan whispered, his breath fogging up the windshield. Against his better judgment, he grabbed his flashlight and stepped out of the cab. The beam of light illuminated the sedan's interior. Empty, not a trace of anyone inside. Yet, as Ethan approached, he heard a faint scratching sound coming from beneath the car. He crouched down, shining the light underneath, and froze. Claw-like handprints marred the underside of the chassis, deep gouges etched into the metal as if something monstrous had dragged itself along the ground. The realization hit him like a freight train. Whatever he'd encountered earlier wasn't human. Before he could react, the world around him shifted, the temperature plummeted, and the wind howled unnaturally loud. Shadows coalesced into a towering figure standing directly behind him. When Ethan spun around, his flashlight revealed the same gaunt man from before. But now, his form was grotesquely elongated, his limbs impossibly thin, and his mouth stretched into an unnatural smile. Leave, the figure rasped, its voice layered with countless others. Or stay forever. Panic seized Ethan. He bolted back to his truck, fumbling with the keys as the creature advanced. Its movements were jerky, yet deliberate, each step accompanied by the sound of cracking bones. Finally, the engine roared to life, and Ethan peeled away, leaving the phantom behind. But escape proved fleeting. As he sped down the highway, the dashboard lights began to flicker. The radio crackled again, louder this time, filling the cabin with overlapping whispers. Names, dozens of them, spoken in voices both familiar and alien. Each name belonged to someone who had vanished on Route 93, and then his own name joined the chorus. Ethan, Ethan. His hands trembled on the wheel as the truck lurched violently, as though an invisible force was trying to wrench control from him. In the rearview mirror, he saw the hooded figure perched atop his trailer, its glowing eyes locked onto his. With a final desperate effort, Ethan yanked the wheel hard, sending the truck careening off the road and into a ditch. When dawn broke, a passing motorist discovered Ethan's abandoned rig. The doors were wide open, the keys still dangling from the ignition. Inside, the seats were soaked with sweat, and claw marks scarred the upholstery. But there was no sign of Ethan Cole. Confused and terrified, the motorist flagged down a state trooper, who arrived within minutes. The officer searched the area thoroughly, but found no evidence of foul play. No blood, no signs of struggle, nothing. It was as if Ethan had simply vanished into thin air. Word spread quickly among truckers. Those who frequented Route 93 began sharing their own encounters with the mysterious woman who hitchhiked late at night. Some claimed they'd picked her up only to find her gone by morning, while others swore they'd seen her wandering the roadside, staring into the distance with an expression of profound sorrow. One such story came from Maggie Torres, a seasoned trucker who'd been hauling goods across the Southwest for over 2 decades. Maggie recounted how she'd once picked up a woman matching Ethan's description near the same stretch of road. Like Ethan, she'd felt an overwhelming sense of dread during the ride, culminating in a terrifying moment when the woman suddenly vanished from the passenger seat without a trace. I swear she was there 1 second and the next, poof, Maggie told investigators. I pulled over and searched everywhere, but it was like she evaporated. I haven't driven that route since. Meanwhile, rumors circulated about a string of disappearances linked to Route 93. Authorities combed through missing persons reports, dating back decades, uncovering a disturbing pattern. Dozens of individuals, mostly travelers and truckers, had vanished without explanation after passing through the area. Many were last seen picking up hitchhikers or stopping at remote rest stops along the highway. Local legends spoke of a vengeful spirit known as the Widow, said to haunt the road in search of victims to claim as her own. According to the tales, the Widow lured unsuspecting drivers to their doom, using her spectral form to torment them until they succumbed to madness, or worse. For Ethan, however, the nightmare was far from over. Though his physical body remained missing, Those who dared venture onto Route 93 after dark reported sightings of a ghostly figure resembling the trucker. Witnesses described seeing him pacing alongside the highway, his eyes wild with terror, muttering incoherently about the woman and the thing on the roof. Some claimed they'd attempted to offer assistance, only for the apparition to vanish into thin air. Others swore they'd heard his voice over their CB radios, begging for help before cutting out abruptly. Despite extensive searches and investigations, Ethan's fate remains unknown. To this day, Route 93 continues to claim new victims, its dark secrets buried beneath layers of myth and speculation. To this day, truckers passing through Route 93 swear they've seen a ghostly figure wandering the roadside, still searching for someone willing to help her finish her journey. And those who do stop, well, they're never seen again. For Ethan Cole, the truth may never come to light. Was he abducted by some malevolent entity, or did he fall victim to his own fears? Whatever the case, his disappearance serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking on lonely highways and the price paid by those who dare to ignore the warnings. Among truckers, Route 93 has become a black mark on the map, avoided by those who know its secrets. While skeptics dismiss the tales as mere folklore, seasoned drivers understand the truth. Some roads are best left untraveled, because once you cross into the realm of the forgotten highway, there's no guarantee you'll ever return. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay informed when the next video comes out. And tell me, what did you think of today's stories? See you in the next video.